Hey guys, welcome to the end of the year, and before we say goodbye to 2017, let's say goodbye, Tommy, to all the cars that left us this year. The dearly departed, the rest in peace, the good, the bad, and the ugly cars that are no longer. And Tommy, let's just get started with what?
So our first car on our list is the SRT Viper.
And these are, of course, the good. We'll start with the good before we get to the bad and the ugly. And the Viper actually officially kind of died in 2016, but officially this year. So what killed that car, I think, was the fact that it was kind of brought out as a Ferrari competitor. And before Dodge figured out that it was really a race car for the road, right? Because what they did was they made the ACR version, they went and set a whole bunch of track records, and it actually blew away every other race car on the road and on the track. And by the point that that happened, it was too late. The brand had come out with kind of this Ferrari-like American supercar, and it just didn't sell, right? It really was a Harley for the road, not a Ferrari for America.
So our next car on our list is the Volkswagen Touareg, or Touareg, depending on who you are or where you live. But the Touareg was a very large, very luxurious SUV made by Volkswagen. And it came to America in the early 2000s, and it really was a great truck. It was essentially a truck because it was based on the Porsche Cayenne, incredibly good off-road. But once again, if you're paying $50,000, $60,000 in America for a premium SUV, I think a lot of people didn't want to see a Volkswagen badge on the front of it.
Yeah, it was a poster child for the right car in the wrong brand, right? People in America just weren't willing to see or pay for a luxurious crossover from a dealership that sold cars in the $30,000 range, you know, for a car that could cost $60,000 if you got the right version. But I love that car. It was near and dear to my heart. It was crazy off-road capable. And I know one of your favorites was the first version, the first turbo diesel, right?
Yeah, they had the V10 TDI, which was just an insane truck. Okay, so the next couple of cars on our list, we're going to combine two into one here, was the Honda Accord Coupe and the Honda Accord V6. Now the Accord is brand new. They just came out with a completely new version, but they did kill off the V6 and the Coupe, and when you combine those two together, you could have a very fun, very fast, enthusiast car that a lot of you guys really love.
Yeah, it died to the turbo craze, right? Everything now, of course, has to be force injected. Inducted and forced both, actually, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was you had two things that I love that nobody's buying. You had a manual transmission, which nobody's buying, and you had normally aspirated V6, which nobody's buying. Every car now has, of course, a 2-liter turbo. So, yeah, I hope that with the new Accord, they come back with one or both of those versions. But, yeah, they're gone, and they're great as used cars, so go get yourself one.
Yep. So the next car on our list was a car that really didn't get enough respect within the car community, and that is the Ford Mustang with the V6. So the V6 is kind of remembered as a rental car engine, but it was a great engine. It had over 300 horsepower. In some variants of the Mustang in the past, you could get it with a manual transmission, but the V6 is no more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there are three variants of Mustangs. There's the GT, which is a V8, there's the V6, and then there's the EcoBoost. And the one that they got rid of was one of my favorites because it was the most affordable. It had over 300 horsepower, but it was one of the Mustangs that went right to the rent-a-car fleet, and maybe that's what killed it. I wish they hadn't gotten rid of it. They did. But let's keep going. The next car on our list, of course, is a car that not only the car is gone, but the brand is gone. It is the Chevy SS, which was a rebadged Holden from Australia, and that is a car that had this issue of, what, you think it wasn't like muscular and square-jawed enough, Tommy?
Well, what I love about the Chevy SS, and what a lot of people love about the Chevy SS, is that it was kind of the ultimate sleeper. So it looked a little bit like a Malibu, but then it had this big 6.2-liter V8, over 400 horsepower with the manual transmission, but it was almost a little bit too much of a sleeper. It just looked so subdued, even though it really was a very fast performance car.
Yeah, and of course it was one of those forbidden fruit, right? So for the longest time, we couldn't get a Holden over here, so they finally rebadged it, brought it over, and what did we do? We didn't buy it. All right, let's keep going. The next vehicle I actually drove in college, and it's, I think, one of those cars that's a rebadged version of another car, and that's why it didn't sell. It's, of course, the Volkswagen Scirocco, which is based on the Golf GTI architecture, and my thinking is if you can get a GTI, why get a Scirocco? Now, we haven't had that car in America for decades, so I'm guessing at this. And you guys out there in TFL land in Europe, maybe you can, in the comments below, let us know why that one went away.
Well, I kind of disagree because I think the Scirocco really was a stunningly beautiful car. Really looked completely different than a Golf. And I really wish that we were able to get it here in the States, the current one, to drive it, but we haven't had our hands on it. So hopefully, maybe in 25 years, we'll end up with a Scirocco.
Yeah, the other next car on our list, of course, was another car that's a rebadged European car, and this time it has a Buick badged on it, the Buick Verano, and I drove the Buick Verano Turbo in the countryside of Nashville and Kentucky, and I loved it. I fell in love with that car. I thought it was small, but fast and fun, and perhaps the reason it went away was because sedans just aren't selling, right? There's this incredible headwind. Nobody is buying sedans, and that car maybe suffered from that. Of course, the other problem with it was that it's a Buick, and Buick is, Tommy, trying to change its image, right? It's trying to go from your dad's car to the hipster car, and maybe that car fell in the crack between the kind of the old image and the new image.
Yep, and then our final car on our good list is a car that we had a
This belongs in the bad list, dude.
No, it was a cool little car. That's the Mitsubishi Lancer. And the Lancer was a cool little car because it looked like a rally car. It had all-wheel drive in some variants with all-wheel control, Mitsubishi's all-wheel control. It had a spoiler, alloy wheels, and it was so affordable. It was one of the cheapest all-wheel drive cars you could buy in America in 2017. Now, I know it wasn't an Evo. I wish we had the Evo back. But the Lancer was a nice little affordable car.
I completely agree with you. It was a great car 10 years ago. Not so good
today. But it was
today.
so affordable that it made up for what it lacked in refinement.
It was tinny. It was cheap.
It had a good sound system. It had a decent infotainment system for, the $20,000 mark.
Now let's be very clear about this. The Evo version had all different bits and pieces that made up the drivetrain. So there was like a world of difference between a Lancer and an Evo.
But it still had
the same.
Yeah, but it still had a nice little 2.4 liter.
Dude, I'll give you this. It was kind of good for its day if you wanted a somewhat entertaining and inexpensive basic transportation. But now it like outlived its time. All right, let's go right to the bad. We've done the good, so let's go to the bad. And of course, this next car I think was so bad that it lost its name, kind of, sort of. It's the Jeep Patriot.
But the Patriot was, once again, like the Lancer, another very affordable way to get into all-wheel drive. It was one of the cheapest crossovers available when it was around. And yes, the quality may have been a little bit questionable, and it didn't perform super well off-road, but it got people into Jeeps.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about the Patriot was that if you went to your dealership, right, they would drop the price like pants on fire because nobody was buying them for what they were at MSRP. Now, of course, the other thing about the Patriot is it was replaced by the Compass, sort of, kind of, because the Compass was still around.
Sort of, yeah.
But there's this rule, right? If the reputation of the car is such that you have to get rid of the name. Now, think Land Rover Discovery, which became the LR3, the LR4, then you get rid of the name. And if you get rid of the name, it also speaks volumes about the vehicle itself.
But the Discovery is back now, so maybe we'll see another Patriot.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, the next car on our list is a car that really wasn't bad, but it just wasn't in any way interesting or outstanding, right? In a segment that is very competitive. It's a Chrysler 200. And what I mean by that, Tommy, is that car was right in the middle of the mid-sized sedan segment, which is one of the most competitive segments in the automotive business. So if you want the best looking car, in that segment, you probably get the Mazda 6 or the Ford Fusion. If you want the one with the most legroom in the back, you get the Passat. If you want the most reliable, you get the Camry or the Accord, and so on and so forth. The problem was the Chrysler was none of that. It wasn't bad. It was a hell of a lot better than 200 that it replaced, right?
Or the
Sebring that it replaced,
yeah.
But it didn't stand up in any way beyond the fact that it was a mid-sized sedan that was kind of sort of competitive.
You were able to get all-wheel drive,
yeah.
And you were able to get the 200S trim, which was a little bit more sporty.
Yeah, the Subaru had that, the Fusion had that.
Right. But yeah, it was a little bit unremarkable for the class. So the next car is kind of a poor car, but a lot of you guys really do like this car. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of you guys, but there is a following, for the Mitsubishi iMiev. They did run it up Pikes Peak. It was a competitor on Pikes Peak for a year.
And they had to put a siren on it so people wouldn't run at it but run away from it.
It was a small, affordable electric vehicle.
Yeah, it was one of the first small EVs that came out, but it didn't have much range. It didn't have much power. It certainly had a horrible name, and it didn't have much of anything going for it. In a way, it was a golf cart with a roof, dude. I mean, it was problematic, it didn't sell very well, but there is this dedicated fan base like there is for Ladas and Nivas and Yugos, and I would say you go and get one before they're gone. All right, we've done the good, we've done the bad. Let's talk about the ugly. And the poster child for that has to be...
Well, a lot of you guys don't like the Nissan Juke, but hear me out on the Juke, okay, right? It's got a small 4-cylinder turbocharged engine. You could get it with all-wheel drive. If you got the all-wheel drive, you got a pretty sophisticated independent rear suspension.
CVT, sorry, CVT.
If you got the all-wheel drive, you did have to get a CVT, but you did have some fun modes in that CVT where it would show you, the turbo boost, and it was a fun driving little car. Regardless of the styling, I think the hardware was there to back up the Juke.
Yeah, it may have been bleeding edge and not cutting edge, right? Nissan says it was inspired by rally cars, and this kind of weird round light becoming the main light, kind of like in Cherokee, right? Even that has gone away. If you look at the latest Cherokee, which by the way just came out, right? They minimized that big round light, which is actually the real headlight, and they made those little slinty lights more traditional. Mm-hmm. And I think the Juke kind of brought in that styling, but it may have been kind of an evolutionary end. But like I say, a lot of people bought them, a lot of people liked them, and yeah, they were tiny.
So our next car is the Chevy Spark EV. The Spark EV was a great little car because it had 400 or something pound-feet of torque to the front wheels, the EV. Yeah, it almost had as much torque as like the Camaro SS if you unchained it.
Yeah, the problem with it was, of course, that it was replaced by the Bolt, so there's really no reason for it to be. But the bigger issue was, in my mind, it was just stylistically challenged, right? It looked like a car hatchback from Korea from the 80s, which is in fact what it was,
yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't...
Well,
you can go back, yeah, it was. And while it was fast, it was also a California compliance car, so you couldn't buy it in most of the country, and it just didn't have enough mojo to make it interesting. All right, let's keep going with the ugly. This next car isn't, I really wouldn't call it ugly, I would just call it stylistically challenged. It's the Lexus CT200H, which is a hybrid, and it was the car that looked to me like a Honda Civic hatch from 3 generations ago.
I actually didn't hate the way it looked. It wasn't a bad car. It was the entryway into the Lexus brand, really. You got some pretty cool tech. Yeah, so it did definitely look better than the HF, which had a lot in common with the Prius. But the CT200H was a hatchback. It tried to be youthful, and I think it succeeded in a lot of ways. It
succeeded in being the car that the oldest people in the Lexus dealership would buy.
Well... Okay, and our final car is
a poster child for right car, wrong brand.
Yeah, it's the Hyundai Azera. And the Hyundai Azera was a full-size luxury sedan made by Hyundai. And if you ever have a chance to drive one or be in one, it really feels well made, a lot of tech, a lot of comfort. It just was being sold along Elantras.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, once again, this was a car that if it had the Lexus badge on it, would have sold like hotcakes. Yeah. A lot of value. But it was facing not one but 2 headwinds, and that is, of course, it was a sedan and it was a family sedan, and family sedans are just not selling right now. People are buying crossovers. So yeah, I think with the new Genesis brand, we'll see what happens with Hyundai in 2018. Maybe they'll rebadge it as something else and bring it back. Who knows? I mean, it's not a bad car. Fundamentally, it's a very solid, well-built, luxurious vehicle.
Yep.
Now, behind us, of course, is our new 2018 project truck, and it is the definition of good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
It is, of course, a 2003 Hummer H2, which we will be doing a lot of fun stuff with. Unfortunately, it broke right away when we bought it on Craigslist, but we fixed it. And what did we do with it yesterday, Tommy?
We took it drag racing against the Jeep Wrangler JL and then the BMW X3 as well.
Yeah. Classic TFL mashup, and you can watch that video by clicking above and going over to our car channel. So, as we bid farewell to 2017 and say howdy to 2018, we want to wish you guys a happy new year, and I especially want to thank all of our Patreon supporters, all of our longtime viewers, you, Tommy, and all of the TFL fans and family out there. Happy New Year, guys.
And one more person we need to thank, or one more group we need to thank, are the guys at Jalopnik. They put this list together. We thank them for that. We did do some reorganizing, but they do great work over there.
Yeah, thanks to our buddies at Jalopnik, and also thank you to all the manufacturers who do put up with our antics, our monkey business, and thank you guys. See you guys next time. Ciao.